Hello, what's up, everybody? Good evening. Welcome in. Yes, it's feet time. It's chill feet time. Good morning. Good morning. Zed is tired. It's actually 9 p.m. in the evening for me, but good morning to you and welcome in, everybody. It's time for Feet with Faye. Yeah, that's funny. It kind of sounds it doesn't sound like a drawing stream, but that's what you guys are getting today. We are going to be drawing feet today, and we're going to be doing a deep dive into drawing feet with the GSL method today. So, and I am actually working in Rebel. And hopefully it doesn't crash because I've got a lot of stuff open on my computer today. Anyway, welcome in. If this is your first stream, hello. We are Winged Canvas, and my name is Faye. And today we are going to be learning some foot anatomy. So let me know in the chat where you guys are from. And first of all, I'd love to thank our sponsor for our stream, XP Pen, who have an awesome selection of digital art tablets for both beginner and advanced artists. So if you're looking for an affordable and reliable tablet, go browse their store. You will find the link in the description of this video. And also, if you're wondering what I use, I just upgraded to an XP Pen 24-inch. It's huge and I love it. I didn't, Jesse actually reviewed it in a recent video, and yeah, I love it. It's like really, really big. It's like the size of a small TV screen. And so like my stylus is probably this big and my face is probably this big. So, yeah, it's very, very huge, and I love it, and it is what I'm using. Any XP Pen users in the chat, let me know. Anyway, our mission at Wing Canvas is to make art education easily accessible for everyone. So join us for live stream lessons every week. We are now streaming Saturdays and Mondays. And we're not just a YouTube channel, we are an online school of illustration, helping art nerds turn their passion into income. Shout out to our amazing students and members for supporting our mission. We love seeing your incredible artwork and watching your skills improve in our classes and weekly streams. So if you are an art nerd, be sure to join our Discord, where you can find our notes and artwork from streams, as well as art challenges and other free resources to help you improve as an artist. Hopefully I will see you on the Discord. I know many of you guys have come from there. Just catching up with the chat here. There were shoes with Josh, now feet with Faye. Yes, we are going to be drawing some feet today. So let's get into it. What you see here in front of me, this is actually, these are some of my notes from my figure drawing intensive, which happened last summer, but we do one every summer. And basically this was an attempt to explain that feet, actually, feet, there's no perfect way to draw feet. Like there really isn't, because the foot, like if you guys have actually seen a like skeleton of a feet, like you'll notice that it's like very it's very, what's the word? I'm trying to use it. Trying to find the right word here. It's very much like a hand, but it's also kind of modular. Like what I mean by that is like it's kind of curved like this from the front, right? So the bones kind of curve and they hug the floor. So you can actually do that with your foot. You can flex your foot, and from the side, right? Like you can think of your foot as a wedge. if you had to think of your foot as one shape, right, you can think of it as a wedge when you're standing. However, the problem with just thinking about it as a wedge is that it becomes a little bit too simple. And then, how do you draw a foot when it's on its tippy toes like this? Because then it's not a wedge at all. Then it becomes more of like an S shape. So something like this, right? So that's why, like, there is really no perfect way to draw feet. The best way to think about feet is to kind of break it up into different shapes. Now, you can see with every angle of the foot, you see a slightly different shape, right? So when I draw feet with my students, typically what I'll do is I'll start with the wedge. And then if you're drawing like the inside of the foot, like the inside of the foot has a bit of this arc, right? Now, some people have very arched feet and some people have very, like, some people have very flat feet. And so this also depends on the person. So for example, you can see up here, you could simplify the heel into a circle, right? Some people also simplify it into a bit of a tapered cylinder like this. So this is actually more accurate for the heel, right? But to simplify it, you can draw it as a circle. So whatever works for you. Okay, so you start off with like a wedge or a block of cheese. Cheese, foot, it's easy to remember. And then with the toes, you can see that the toes here, the toes actually move independently, right? So really, you can think of the toes as like a kind of like a semicircle, or if you're looking at it from the side, it's kind of more like this shape, or I should say form. It's kind of like a semicircle, right? So from the side, something like that. So if you want to think of it as this type of shape, right? You can, but then the foot, the most important thing is where this part of the foot is. Like, think of that as almost being on a hinge, right? So if it's a hinge, then it can actually technically move up or down. So that makes it a little bit easier when you're drawing a foot that becomes a little bit more modular. So for example, if I took this drawing right here, and then I want to kind of continue, right, with this type of shape with the wedge, right? And then the arc is kind of like this. And then let's say the heel is kind of like that, right? Then it would kind of connect to the ankle. Right? So if you want to think of it as like robot feet, think of it like mech, right? Iggy just did a stream on how to draw mech. And if you think about the assembly or the mechanics of a foot, how would you actually build a foot? Looking at this anatomy and thinking about how to simplify it, really, where are the hinges? So there's a hinge pretty much like right here, right? So there's like a hinge here, and then there's a hinge right here. So in that case, this would go up here, right? So where are all of the parts where your foot will hinge? And then you can kind of think of it like that, and then start to break it down into the different modular parts of the foot. So if you think of it as a robot foot, it becomes a lot easier to simplify. Okay. But really, there's no perfect way of drawing feet. Like if you look at the breakdowns here up at the top, what I'm doing, and I highly recommend this, like you can just find some foot poses on Pinterest or something, and then just try finding shapes in them. Like just try tracing the shapes. Um, but when you're tracing them, what you want to do is you want to focus on the hinge parts, right? And try to use similar shapes as you are moving through the exercise. And then there are some landmarks that you want to think about. So, for example, where are the ankles? Okay, where are the ankle bones on each side of the foot? You can kind of see that the ankle is on a bit of a tilt, right? So on the inside of your foot, the ankle is a little bit, I'm just feeling my own foot. On the inside of the foot, my ankle is a little bit higher. And on the outside of the foot, my ankle is a little bit lower. So this tilt is something to keep in mind as well when you are drawing feet. And like keep in mind, right, like draw that ankle on each part of your foot, like each drawing of your foot, just to kind of figure out where things are and the consistency of it. That's probably one of the most important landmarks, right? So depending on where it is, there's going to be a bit of a tilt. Okay, so the other thing I want to mention is just choosing the most simplified method for the pose. If you try to draw feet in the same way, like all the time, it starts to not feel as human, right? Like our feet are not robotic, right? They can curl. You can do, your feet are very, very expressive. So there's only so much you can do with this kind of mechanical approach. The mechanical approach is good for when you want to simplify forms in a certain pose. But if you look at the bone structure of your feet, right, you can see that like it can kind of curl, the toes can open, right? And there's really I just want all of us to not get stuck on there's one method to draw the feet and it's broken down into A, B, and C shapes, because it's not. Jessie actually has a method for drawing feet, and we have a video on it where she combines different shapes for drawing feet. But for me, I find that it's just easier to observe and to break it down into 3 steps, considering the gesture. So we are going to talk about the GSL method, which is the gesture, shape, and line method for drawing feet. And hopefully it will be simplified for you by the end of this stream. Okay, so I'm going to turn off all of these layers. And we are going to start with some timed drawings. So for those of you, let me know if you have ever drawn timed feet or like timed poses at all. Let me know if you have ever tried it. And what your experience was like with timed poses. The reason why I want to do some timed poses with you guys today is because I find that it's a really, really good way of warming up. And then after we do these timed poses, then we can start to we can do the submissions. So I am actually using a site called Line of Action. I use it pretty often, and I also use another site called sketchdaily.net. But recently I've been using Line of Action because you can actually choose the amount of time you want each pose to be. So I think these are 2 minutes. Yeah, these are 2-minute poses. All right. So the goal of the 2-minute poses is just to get us warmed up and to be able to find a good rhythm and good groove. So let me open up a new layer here, and we're just going to call this gesture practice. Okay. So I'm just using a pencil because I used it during the last stream and I really, really enjoyed it. But when you guys are using, when you're using the GSL method, right, you want to just think about capturing one thing at a time. So we are going to focus on gesture first, and then shape, and then line in that order. So when you're thinking about gesture, you're really thinking about the movement. And then when shape, you're thinking about the silhouette. And when you're drawing line, you can think about the finish, right? Most people start with lines first. So in this example with the legs, typically all you really need to do is to think about the movement. So like the gesture really comes from the top of the leg as well, right? So the gesture would be something like this. Okay. So that can be a very, very simple way to express what the pose is doing. And then you can draw other things like, for example, if that's the line of the toe, you bring it down, and then I can see that my heel is actually should be much lower, right? So then I might do something like I might readjust my gesture. So if I have my heel here, then would align it up here and then start to draw in the pose of the foot going this way. Right, so then I have my shape, and then I would just like draw in the basic shapes. So this foot over here is foreshortened, and then I would have to, if I want to look at finding the wedge shape, right, I can then look for the shadow shapes. So if the shadow shapes on this side of the foot, right, you can kind of see there's one plane, and then there's the toe coming out this way, and then these other toes coming out that way. Over here, you can see where the toes start to bend a little bit, right, where that hinge is. And then if you wanted to like draw out the individual toes, start with the big toe and then start to map out the shapes. So for me, I rarely draw feet without drawing the ankles. It's kind of like drawing a head without a neck. Like if you just draw a floating head and you don't draw the neck, then you don't really have a lot of, you don't have anything that it's connected to, right? And in that case, it's not complete. So same thing with the feet. I really believe that with the foot, or with anything that you draw, it should all be connected. So I'm actually not drawing these feet relative in proximity to each other, but I just wanted to show you how I would look for those wedge shapes, right? So you can kind of see the wedge over here. You can kind of see where the ankles are, right? So you want to get in that placement of the ankles before anything else. Now, if we look at the toe here, right? When you're drawing toes, you can kind of break it down into different cylinders, like different segments here. So if you know that the toe is sort of facing towards us, then the nail is actually going to curve this way, right? Like the curve of the nail is super important as well. Um, and so a lot of people, like I find they'll draw toes, like they'll draw like a toe like this, and then they'll be like, okay, here's my nail. And then that really flattens it out, right? Like you could have the same toe, but if the nail is going this way, right, then the toe is actually pointing down. If you have this toe like this, and then the nail is going this way, right, then you know that the toe is is kind of flat on the floor and it's going the opposite way. So the curve of the nail is really, really important for drawing feet. And it's almost important to kind of put it in before you get to the details. Like even if you have one nail there, then you know how to approach the other nails, right? Then you know that all the other nails are going in the same direction. So the point of timed poses is to really draw what you need, right, in a very small amount of time so that you have the clues and you set yourself up for a win later on, right? If you don't do that and you just sort of focus on the outline, then what happens is you're not really sure how to draw the rest of the structure, and then that can be a problem. Okay, so let's check up with the chat. Timed poses, yeah, so timed poses are really, really good to practice with. And I actually paused this one just to kind of show a little bit of the anatomy, but once I have enough examples in, then I'm going to speed it up and then we can do some quick studies. So Shadowbean Arts says, I've done time gesture drawings in art class. It was awful because my teacher was yelling instructions at us at the whole time. Yeah, it can be a little bit stressful when you do timed poses, and it's almost better to do them on your own, because if you have somebody telling you what to do and you're trying to watch something, then it becomes really, really stressful. But like if you do it on your own, you set a timer for 2 minutes and then increase it to 5 minutes, right? And so if you start off with, like, I usually do 1 minute and then I do 2 minutes and then I do 5 minutes. And for me, I really like that exercise because for me, it gets me warmed up, and it doesn't even matter if you can draw them well. It just helps you get into a good rhythm. And it helps you practice a lot. So you do lots of time gestures, hands and poses, but never feet. Okay. All right. Are you going to have the references be bigger, or should we find our own pictures? I can make the references bigger. Let's see. Let me bring this down a little bit. Let me bring it to that size. I just don't want to cover anything too important. Okay, I can try to make them bigger, but sometimes the orientation is the other way, which is why there's lots of black space on either side. All right. All right, let's do the next pose. So this one here, we're working with 2 feet. And again, it's always better to draw both feet rather than just drawing one, right? Because of context. So what I might do for the gesture is I might draw like the arc that both of the feet are making, and then draw the angles of the feet. So one on this side, one on the other side, and then thinking about the negative space in between, right? And then what the ankle is doing. So this one's going this way and this one is going this way. So there's a bit of a bend. When I see people draw gestures, I always find that they don't draw the feet. So there's just these like stumpy sticks. The legs just kind of end and there's no feet. So I always tell my figure drawing students, like, make sure that you're drawing feet in all of your gestures, because if you don't, then there's really no, there's nothing that is ending the pose, you know, like you can't feel the weight of a pose unless you have the feet. And the feet are also so expressive that sometimes there's like nuances in a pose. Like if somebody has their toes curled, but the rest of their body seems very normal, right? You can see that they're nervous, but you can't really, normally you wouldn't ever see anybody curling their toes because it's, you know, in their shoe. But those are like the really subtle things that you can do to show expression in feet. All right, so once you kind of get in the basic gesture and like the overall shape, then you can start to divide everything else out. So you can ask yourself, okay, where is the curve of the toes? What's the ankle doing? So the ankle bone is going this way. Is there an arc in the foot? And then how do you want to divide out the toes? So if you think about feet from the top, like think about a flipper, right? Usually speaking, if you divide that foot into 3 sections, so 1, 2, 3, this is somebody's left foot, right? The big toe will take up 1/3 of this space, okay? So 1/3 of this space will be taken up by the big toe. And then the rest of the toes sort of fit into the, you know, the other 2/3, okay, roughly speaking. And usually there is a more of a gap between the big toe and the other toes, which is where our nice, you know, string sandals, that's kind of where it goes into the foot. So with those proportions in mind, you can start to divide out the toe. And because this toe over here is kind of behind the others and it's a little bit tucked away, you can divide it out into thirds and then again to kind of keep track of what the feet are doing. So I did my overall gesture and shape in about 2 minutes, and then I just paused the timer so that we can go into more of the details. So now I'm doing the line. And when I draw the line, I'll usually kind of emphasize the bottoms of the toes, make the toes a little bit darker, right? Because there's ambient occlusion happening between the toes, which makes a dark shadow like underneath the foot, right? If I didn't go dark underneath the foot, or I didn't use like a thicker line, then what happens is the foot tends to look like it's floating versus being anchored on the ground, right? So with the heel, I don't have to do as dark or as hard of a line, but then with the other parts, I'll just make it a little bit darker. Right, there's some wrinkles in the foot, lots of wrinkles on the underside of the foot as well. Always try to draw in the ankles if you can. The tops of the legs are really important. And then draw in the toes, like the toenails, if you can. I don't know about you guys, but my toenails are so tiny. Like my little toenail is like it's like the size of a sunflower seed, probably smaller. It's so tiny. And my aunt used to make fun of me because she used to say that my big toe, my middle toe, and my little toe were short, and my second toe and my fourth toe were long. So she'd be like, your big toe, she said, 1, 3, 5 are short and 2, 4 are long. So whatever weird quirk you have in your feet, it's not weird, but feet are just weird in general. So everybody's foot is a little bit different. And it's just kind of fun to notice what's weird about your own feet if you actually do get a chance to study them. We're going to go into toes that are curled. So stay tuned. I have lots of images to go over. You feel awkward drawing them? Don't feel awkward. Why is it awkward? Why are feet any different than hands? Like, I don't get it. Are shoes or feet more important to you? Feet, I think, should be more important, because if you don't understand feet and you only draw shoes, then you're never really going to understand what's underneath it, and you're just going to cover it all up. So I definitely think feet are worth studying, because if you can draw feet, then you can draw shoes. But not necessarily the other way around. So this second foot is a little bit more challenging. It's at a slightly awkward angle, and oops, sorry, my chat disappeared. 1 second here. There we go. So the second foot, I want to pay attention to how thick it is. Right? It's going further into the distance, and then you can kind of see that the top bone here goes right into the toe. Right? It goes right into the toe, and then the toe is kind of curling up. And you know what? If you feel weird about drawing feet, then it's going to be weird. But to me, like studying anything, you can abstract it. So if you don't think of it as feet and just think of it as forms, then it's not weird at all. It's just abstract forms. I think one of the worst things you could do is think literally about what you're drawing, because sometimes your brain is going to tell you that you can't do something because that something has been labeled in your brain as difficult. And so if you're really struggling to draw something, you might need to reframe it in your mind. Like you might need to, instead of thinking about it as feet, think about it as something else so that you can sort of overcome the fear or the weirdness of it. Okay. So two things, actually three things that are important when you're drawing feet together is one is the negative space. So the negative space in between the feet, in between the toes, all that space that's kind of in between is really helpful, because if you can draw this shape, to me, the negative space in the picture looks like the letter D. Okay, it looks like the letter D. You can see it right here, right? So if you can see the negative space and visualize it, you're going to get a lot better at drawing proportions in general. You're going to be a lot better at drawing shapes in general, because there's positive shapes and negative shapes, and most of the time we only focus on the positive, whereas negative shapes do a lot to really help you place things and really help you just look for the shapes in the spaces, right? Not just in the anatomy, but in between. So I made this ankle a little bit too low, so I'm going to move it up a little bit higher because you can actually see it there. Being able to break things down into shapes is the most important, because then you can draw both. That's right, Kevin. Totally agree. I find trying the curve difficult, and somehow that always flattens the foot and feels less organic. Drawing the curve, do you mean like drawing the arc here? This is negative space in here too, right? It looks like this, right? You see that shape? There's the other thing. I said there are a few things that are important. One is negative space. Two is the, I'm going to say like the grounding line. This is not an anatomy term. I just made this up just so I can like help explain what that means. So the grounding line is, to me, it's where the feet align, right? So you think of it as alignment, because if you draw a pose, right, and you don't have time to draw the feet, like you could say, okay, there's someone standing and then they have a foot over here and then they have a foot like over here, okay? And if they are if they're standing like this, then the grounding line would be like that, so that you know that both of those feet are standing on the same plane, except this plane is going into perspective, right? You can kind of tell that this foot is going to be bigger and this foot is going to be smaller. So that alignment is really, really important, because it keeps your figures balanced, and it helps you prepare it helps you prepare to draw them in a better perspective and together, right? So the plane that they're standing on. So in this case, in the reference picture that you see here, right? In that case, we're looking down at the feet, and you can tell because you can see the line of the floor, right? You can see it right there. That's kind of, it's not really your horizon line, but that's really where the wall meets the floor. So you can tell that your POV is looking down at the feet. So realizing where your POV is also really important. And then the last thing is just figuring out the the overall shape of the toes. So over here, it's kind of doing this. On the bottom one, it's kind of doing this. So it's kind of like a sail shape, right? So think of like a sailboat. Think of a sailboat. It's shaped like a sail. This sort of captures all of your toes in one go, right? So you got the big toe and then the others all on a curve. The whole family has small toenails, though I thought I was born special for not having it. Arvog, my my whole family also has really small toes, so you are not alone. Hey Vin, you made it. Welcome in. Okay, so let's move on to another pose. Ooh, so this one is a very foreshortened one. This one's going to be fun to do. Let me just adjust the size of the reference here so I have some more room. All right. Let's see how much canvas I have here. Oh, I drew these extra big. Okay. Let's make some room here. All right. Still trying to get used to Rebel because you can only have one thing open at a time, which is fine. I like how simple it is. Okay, so we'll do one more and then we will look at some submissions. This one is tricky. Yes, this one is very tricky. This one, so let me explain a little bit how you would draw foreshortened toes like this. And then we will go into the GSL practice. I just figured that I would have to do a little bit of analysis before we jump into the ton poses. So let's talk about foreshortening. Okay, so foreshortening. So let's say we take this sail shape like this, okay? That is the overall shape of the toes, okay? So let's say it's like this. Now, what happens when you put that sail shape and you turn it so that you're just looking at it like that, right? Then in your head, you can probably think of it like something like this. So hold on. If you're just drawing it like this, then you might see something like this. Right? Or it might even look a little bit higher, depending, a little bit thicker, depending on the toes. So let's say it's like this. Okay, so that's kind of how you need to think about foreshortening. And then the other toes would probably look like this. Right? So really just think of them as forms. And then you can then think about dividing them up. So if I divided this up into thirds, this would be 1/3 and 2/3. Sup, Miriaki Painter, welcome in. Right, and then for here, you would also divide it up, divide it into thirds. And remember, when things are going back into space, right, things are going to get smaller and smaller. So if this wasn't curved, it wouldn't be as difficult. But let's just say we have a prism like this, and it's in perspective. Okay. So let's say we have a prism like that. If you want to find the middle of this prism, which is distorted because it's foreshortened, then you have to draw an X in between. So that would be the middle, right? So if that's the middle, then you can probably guess that the toes would be divided up like this. Right? And they get smaller and smaller as they go into the distance. But of course, feet are not flat. They are arc. There's like an arc with the toes. So it becomes even more difficult to draw foreshortened toes or foreshortened feet. So let's have a crack at this. The first thing I'm going to do is draw the gesture. So I'm going to draw in what this foot is doing, what the other foot is doing. And then try to sketch out the cylinders of the ankles, because that's going to inform, or the cylinder of the legs, and try to get that negative space in as well. So for here, you can actually really see the wedge. Right? But then the toes, kind of fit into this shape, like this. So it's kind of facing up. And it's weird because you can see a little bit of the underside of the foot. As well as the top. Like, feet are weird like that. In some poses, you can actually see both the bottom and the top of the foot, right? Okay, so in this foot that's coming out, the big toe is actually like up here. I always tend to start with the big toe, because if you can figure out where the big toe is, then it's easier to work big to small, right? So both of these toes can be placed first. And then the other toes. And sometimes I'll just draw them in as circles, especially when they're super foreshortened. and then start to adjust my shapes. Yeah, this is a really tricky one. Just trying to look at where the toenails are. I should have drawn this a little bit bigger. Okay, let's open this, make it a little bigger. The other thing about toes is that toes are flatter at the top and rounder at the bottom. So really, drawing them as like balls like that can only work for so long. Like you will still need to make part of it a little bit more pointy to be more convincing. Same thing with hands, right? Fingers are the same way. I need to fix this toe here. The good thing about drawing feet is that they don't have to be perfect, because unlike hands, we are not staring at feet all day. Thank goodness. Hands are a little bit harder to draw because with hands, you know, we look at our hands all day long. And so we have a lot more familiarity with hands than we do with feet. So when you are drawing feet, you know, even if they look a little weird or they don't look perfect, you can get away with a little bit more than if you were drawing hands, right? Like with hands, if you don't get the hands right, then, you know, even somebody inexperienced with art would be able to tell that there's something not quite right with it. So, all right. If you wanted to add a little, let's say you wanted to add a little bit of shading to this to just kind of enhance the planes of the foot and to just sort of inform the viewer a little bit more about the planes of the feet, and I'll show you how you can do that. I realize that this heel is a little bit too small, so I'm just going to adjust it. All right, so I'm going to use a big brush here, and I'm going to shade as if I was shading with pencil. Almost as if I was using the side of my pencil, just to give a little bit of roundness to that foot. and then the top of the foot over here. This is actually the closest to pencil I've ever experienced in a digital program. I'm using Rebel, by the way. It's a digital painting program that allows you to get really, really, really nice textures that sort of mimic the feel of traditional mediums, and it does it really well. Like, I'm just using a pencil tool, but I've never been able to find a pencil brush in just like a standard digital program like I have with Rebel. So yeah, I really, really like the feel of the pencil tool in this program. Let me know if any of you guys have actually tried it before. Rebel is paid, but it's not that expensive, and it's a pretty cool program. You can wait till it goes on sale. Kabir says, is foreshortening is pretty intuitive. Is most of it an educated guess? Yes and no. With foreshortening, there's different methods for foreshortening. So in this method, what I really tried to show is how to simplify the toes into a block. Like if you pretend that this is a Lego block, like a special Lego block, okay? Then you want to try to draw it in different perspective, and then it becomes easier. So foreshortening can be done with like forms, or it could be done with like coils. So for example, if you're drawing an arm that's really foreshortened, right? Or a leg that's really foreshortened, then it might look something like this, right? Or even a toe, like a toe that's super foreshortened might look like this. Okay. Like, I have to flatten the bottom of the toe, otherwise it doesn't look like it has any weight on it. But like, let's say that's the toe, right? If it's really foreshortened, then one cylinder is going to be smaller than the other. Or if it's a leg. The other method you could use is the coil method. So you could like get slightly bigger as you go. So if you're drawing like a leg in perspective or an arm in perspective, right? You could use the coil method and it can look like it's getting bigger, right? So there's the coil method and then the ring method, which is very similar. But I like to try to break it down into blocks and think about it that way. Because for me, that makes the most sense. You can try out different methods. We have lots of foreshortening videos on the channel as well. Different methods for foreshortening. Josh has a video also on forced perspective, which is also pretty cool to learn because it allows you to exaggerate perspective. So if you know the fundamentals, then you can exaggerate. Okay, I gotta move on to another example here. The Opal Dagger says, I find hands so much easier than feet. It is easier. It is so much easier. Drawing while talking, do you know whether that's just PC or is there a Procreate app? Procreate is just for the iPad. If you're talking about Rebel, I actually don't know. That's a good question. I don't know. I would think that they have a version available for Mac, though. That would only make sense. I'm I'm going to try to find, okay, I like this example. These 2 feet kind of overlapping. So this is kind of like a nervous pose. Right? This is a nervous pose. And I think we can probably capture it well. So now I'm going to kind of break down, again, like if we're using the GSL method, we can start by sketching out the gesture of the feet, what it's doing in space, the grounding line here. Right? So there's the flat side of the foot and then the round side of the foot. Over here as well, the round side of the foot and the flat. Flat side of the foot seems like it's actually more vertical than I have it, so I'm just going to adjust. Right? And then the angle of the ankle. Try saying that 10 times fast. The angle of the ankle. You'll notice that they are opposing here, right? And then this way, we're coming down and then figuring out how the feet are overlapping. And then what the negative space is inside. So the negative space kind of looks like an arrow. Like it looks like an arrow shape, right? Kind of. So sometimes it's really helpful to just like draw an abstract shape to kind of help you figure out where to place certain things. Oops. So ankles can also appear really thin sometimes. And like you might notice that animators will sometimes exaggerate the thinness of the ankles, like the boniness of the ankles in animated characters. So that's when you can do a little bit of stylizing, right? If you are more of a character designer, right, then you can make the ankles a little bit thinner. As long as you kind of do them both together, then that should be fine. All right. So once you have the overall shape and the negative shape sort of figured out, then you can start to map out the rest of the feet. So again, finding the curve of the toes. And then some people like to draw the, let's talk about toes again for a second. If you want to think about a toe as a more of a blocky shape instead of a cylinder, right? You can think of it like this, okay? So we're looking at the big toe right now. If you want to draw it as a cylinder or a cylindrical form, you can kind of draw it like this. Whatever is easier for you, right? Whether it's a block or a cylinder, the key is the edge here. So if you're drawing the edge of a toenail, right, that edge of the toenail is going to follow the edge of your shape. or your form, I should say. So over here, it would kind of do this, right? You see what I mean? So the toenail sits on the edge. So all the toes do the same thing. Doesn't matter how weird the toe is. Like if you look at the little toe in this example actually looks like this. Like it's like this. My toe, my little toe also curves inwards. Like the little toe, chances are your little toe doesn't sit flat like that. Your little toe kind of curves into your other toe, right? So it's on its own, it's kind of crooked, right? So even when you're drawing toes, you kind of have to keep in mind the subtleties, like the subtle nuances of each toe and their function. So like the little toe's function is really just to give that extra bit of stability on the outside of your foot. So the fact that it curves inwards, it's functional. Like it's meant to almost cup the ground instead of your foot being flat on the ground. It's actually cupping the ground, right? Like if you stand on one foot and you try to balance, right? You're doing yoga, try to balance on one foot. You'll notice that you'll notice that your little toe is like a stabilizer, right? It gives your feet that extra bit of balance. I bet you never really thought about the functions of your toes individually. This is me nerding out to toe anatomy. So the fact that toes can be a little bit crooked is just how they were designed. Oh, Ramos, I hope your ankle injury feels better. Get better soon. Ankle injuries are not fun. Our bodies, though, I gotta say, our bodies are so resilient and also really cool because, you know, on a normal day, everything's fine. You don't even notice, right? But when something is not functioning well or something is kind of off, then it's super uncomfortable. So really the key to drawing realistic feet is to find good references and study them. Like don't try to like make up feet. It's hard to do. Really, really hard to do. We just don't look at them enough. And so if you want to get good at drawing anything, you got to look at reference pictures. And no, it's not weird to look at pictures of feet for the sake of studying them. Nothing wrong with it. So if anything, you can also study your own feet. I did that a lot for cross-hatching exercises. I would pose for myself, and I have tons and tons of drawings of my own feet. In terms of the bones, like remember when we looked at the bone structure? Sometimes you can see some of those bones showing through, right? Now, you don't want to emphasize it too much because it's going to look like there's a lot of stress on that foot. So you want to like be selective about how much of the bones you really want to emphasize. You know, just because you see it doesn't mean you have to draw it. So right now I'm kind of finessing the line a little bit to give the foot a bit more character. Drawing while talking? Okay, you're beginning to have fun? Great. I am glad. I am glad. We're just chilling and drawing. So once I have one foot down, it's a lot easier to kind of place the other toes, right? So I realized that this foot is a lot longer than I had initially planned. And the other thing that I wouldn't have noticed if I wasn't looking at a reference is that there's like an extra space here between the little toe and the side of the foot that I would have never drawn in. I would have just forgot about it. Like, I don't think I would have, I think I would have just ended the foot like here, you know, had I not looked at the reference. So that's why I think like looking at references is really critical if you're trying to draw something that's unfamiliar. Because if you don't look at reference and you're just trying to like think about anatomy out of your head, you're really limited to your visual library, like your visual vocabulary, right? Like, think about how much time you spend looking at faces. Okay, like every single day, even as babies, we grow up looking at our parents, you know, our caregivers. We're so familiar at looking at faces that even a 2-year-old can start to see faces anytime they see, you know, 3 circles and a triangle like this, you would see a face. Like my 2-year-old, whenever he sees any kind of object arranged like this, he'll be like, happy face. And I'm like, okay, maybe a surprised face, but yes, it's a face. So we recognize faces, and we're so familiar with faces, right? So we could probably draw a face out of our head in a lot more detail. That's a lot more convincing than drawing a foot. Like, how long have you ever spent staring at a foot? I mean, unless you work with feet, or you know, maybe you do nail art or something. Like, you might look at your feet a little bit more, but like, we really don't spend a lot of time looking at feet. So why would you expect to be able to draw feet out of your head? Like, that's just, it doesn't make any sense, right? Even though I've probably drawn more feet than most people here, I'm going to assume that I've probably drawn the most feet, I still can't draw them super realistically out of my head. like I could probably get away with it being very simple, right? Simplified. Like, I will draw feet from the front. I kind of draw it like, you know, like this. Let's say I draw a foot like that. There's a foot from the front. And then what I might do is like think about the toes, where I want to place the toes. So I would be like, okay, there's the big toe, you know, like, right? Like, okay, sure. Right? Like, I could draw a foot like that And I could probably put in the toenails, right? Like I kind of understand that a foot looks like that. And then from the side, you know, I could probably draw somewhat a foot from memory, right? And sometimes like this is fine. Like you don't really need to draw feet in too much detail, right? If you can just kind of understand the basics of a foot, like that's how I would draw a foot out of my head. From the front, I would kind of draw it like this and then I would round it out. And for the most part, if I said, yeah, this is a foot, nobody would really care or question it that much, right? Right? So you can get away with it. But however, I don't think I could draw these feet in this much detail without using reference. So guys, doesn't matter how long you've been drawing, doesn't matter how much skill you have, the professional artists will still use reference unless it's something that they draw over and over again so many times, like their own character or whatever it is, that they're so familiar with drawing something, like you've put in, you know, 10,000 hours in studying something that you actually don't need a reference anymore, but most of the time you will still need a reference. So it is what it is, and I think a lot of people get bummed out because they're like, oh, I had to use a reference, and it's like, yeah, so that's a good thing. It's a good thing. All right, catching up with the chat. Charcoals, yes, I'm not a huge fan of charcoal. I like Conte way better. You know what? I used so much charcoal in art school that I would blow my nose and it would be like black, like gray. That's how much charcoal I inhaled. And then I was like, maybe I shouldn't be using so much charcoal. Compressed charcoal, powdered charcoal compressed into sticks. So I really like graphite or Conte sticks. I prefer Conte sticks. Those are the really nice kind of chalk pastel sticks. I'm just not a fan of charcoal in general. I had to use it for art school, but you know, sacrifices. Okay. All right, so now let's study a compressed foot. Actually, before we do that, let's take a short break and look at some submissions. I didn't do these in the beginning because I thought it'd be nice to kind of do them midway through. But if you didn't already know, we have a Discord where we post monthly challenges. And this month, the challenge is March of the Machines. So March is going to be over in 7 days. So if you have artwork that is mechanical in nature, anything that can fit into the theme, or if you haven't made something, draw something mechanical. Iggy just did a stream teaching you guys how to draw mech and Gundams and stuff. So, you know, you can check that out. Check out the replay. Anyway, we had some really great submissions, and I just wanted to share my picks with you. So our first submission is by Anne. Anne, you created this really cute poster. I love poster design, guys. I think it's so cool to see illustration and text together and kind of figure out how that all works. And when I saw this, I didn't realize that the parrot was electric until I read it. And I was like, oh, that's kind of a cool take. But yeah, I really like the style of it. I like the kind of the muted triadic palette, and I like the text that you chose. I'm a big fan of this kind of futuristic style font, the sans serif fonts. So nice work, Anne. Thank you for submitting. Our second submission is by Hadassah Hess. Hadassah, I featured your work once before, and I really love the storytelling that you put in your artwork. I love the contrast here between like the classical, you know, poofy sleeves and the, you know, the classical woman being, I guess, wooed by this futuristic robot kind of coming out of her window, either rescuing her or, you know, surprising her. I even like the reflections, like the subtle purple reflections that you put on the robot. Very cool. Yeah, really, really nice storytelling and beautiful piece. Thank you for submitting. And our third submission is by Soda Sophie. Soda Sophie, I haven't seen your work before, but I think I love this piece. I think it's so awesome. I really like the notes that you put on there. Kind of looks like German. I don't speak German, but I tried to translate it, and the translation says, appears to be a misspelled or distorted attempt at German. So that was my bad. But anyway, I think it translates to a gross mockery of God's plan in English. And I thought that was so cool. Super cool piece. I love seeing traditional stuff on the server. And yeah, I thought this piece was really, really fun. And I hope to see more of it in the future. So nice work, Soda Sophie. Thank you for submitting. So there's 2 more streams, guys, in March. So if you get your submissions in, Jessie's stream is on Saturday. She's going to be streaming cyborg creatures, if I'm not mistaken. And Josh is going to be correcting or taking your character designs and drawing them in, like drawing a character sheet. And so that is a submission stream. So if you want to get your character designs redrawn by Josh, drawing them at different angles, make sure that you join our Discord. So join our Discord, lots of goodies on there, and you can also submit your artwork both for the challenge as well as for Josh's stream next Monday. All right. Let's keep going, shall we? Okay, so let's do another pose. Let's see here. So we're gonna do a pose of like really, really curled feet. And actually I wanted to do some high heels, but we have half an hour left. So I wanted to ask you guys, if you're here live with me in the chat, let me know if there is a pose that you want to see me draw. Can you submit these still? Yeah, you can. There's still 2 more streams where you can get featured. Absolutely. I want to draw, let me just kind of keep going here. I want to find like a pose that's a little bit more challenging. This one has the toes bent. I'm trying to find one where it's like standing on tippy toes. Oh, I like this one. I like this one with the big spaces between your toes. Can anybody do this? Can anybody open up their toes like this? I like this pose. I'm going to do this. I don't know about you, but I can do this with my feet, and people seem to think it's really weird, but I think it's a cool skill to have. Let me move this up here with the other notes on toes. All right, let's draw some weird open toes like this. What program am I using to flip through references like that? Is it just a feature of my tablet? No, I am using OBS, which is why I can move this around. And I have a program called Line of Action, and it's just kind of set up through my OBS. But basically, like, here, let me bring this website, right? So, one second here. So if you can see this website, it's called Line of Action, and then basically I just have it going to my my OBS. So that's what it looks like. So I'm going to put it back now. Hopefully it'll be back. Okay. You could also just, like, if you have two monitors, you could just have it on one monitor. Or you could have it on your phone while you're drawing too. Actually, having it on your phone might be really good because you can't see it in too much detail. And I feel like having really detailed references can actually hinder your progress. Mostly because if you see things in too much detail, you get distracted by the detail. And so you really don't need that much detail, only when you're zooming in to stuff. Like, only when you are just putting in like the final touches and you can't see something clearly, you can, zoom in a bit. But usually I like zoomed out references. Like, the smaller, the blurrier, the better, because then you're just focusing on the things you need to focus on. Right? So you can see, like, here I've drawn the gesture, and really what I drew was like the movement, right? The movement of the leg into the foot. Okay? Movement of the leg into the foot, which is this line here. Right? It's like one continuous gesture. So, like, don't think of like the leg as this and then the foot as this. That's not a gesture. A gesture is more like this. A gesture is more of a continuous line, right? Rather than like this and this, because that stiff line is going to result in a stiff drawing. So that's one thing to remember. Keep it fluid. Keep it fluid. And then the other lines that I have here, these are all lines that indicate, like, this is the ankle. So I'm in my gesture, I'm putting in alignments. Right? So all of these lines here are basically telling me, okay, these are where the toes, this is where the toe starts, this is where the toe ends, this is the tilt of the ankles. Tilt of ankles. And then like the grounding line. In this case, there is no ground. So you can put in like the alignment of the toes. Toe lines, let's say toe alignment. Okay, so when you're thinking about the gesture, just think about these things. So you can see, like, I didn't draw a foot. I just kind of mapped out the rhythm of the foot, right? And then when I move on to my shape part, or the shape stage, what I'm doing is I am drawing out the positive and negative spaces and trying to keep things really, really simple. So I tell people to draw a mitt when they're actually drawing hands. So you can think of it like, okay, draw socks. Okay, so instead of drawing shoes, it's better to draw socks. I should have said this earlier because I was thinking about it, but it's easier to draw feet as socks because then you're not thinking about all of the different parts of the foot, right? You're just kind of thinking about the toes together. So that's something that can really help, is not thinking about the toes as individual units, but to think of them as grouped together, like in a sock. Okay, so here I'm figuring out the negative space. Okay, so the negative space can help me draw the positive space. And look, I have socks. I drew some socks. Skitsalot says, I once drew a Kermit the Frog's head attached to a foot, and my friends looked at me weird because of how much detail I put in the foot. Who cares about people thinking you're weird? Like, own it. Own that you're weird. Like, I'm weird, and I am okay with that. Everybody's weird in their own way. Like, if you're not weird, then you are bland, average. It's cool to be weird, dude. Somebody asked if you have to if you spend any time on tippy toes. In response to, I used to get called monkey feet. Okay, just catching up. All right, so the next step in here is to actually figure out how to draw the negative space. Okay, so the negative space in between the toes, like this. I was gonna do some timed drawings, guys, but then I didn't want to stress anybody out. Didn't seem like you guys were super into timed poses, but I definitely recommend trying them on your own. I wanted this to be more of a chill stream, so we're just kind of like drawing feet. But normally, if it was a class, I would have my students warm up by drawing sets of 1 minute, 2 minute, and 5 minute poses. But I was in a chill mood today, so we're going a little slower. Okay, so focusing on the spaces in between the toes. So let's say you draw your sock, right? Or your mitt, if you're doing hands. Then draw in the negative space, right? Like the negative space here looks like an R shape. Here it just kind of looks like this, right? So I think about letters a lot when I'm looking at negative space, but you just want to make a mental note, like what is the shape of the negative space that you see, right? And then just allow yourself to draw it in an abstract way, and don't focus so much on what it is you're drawing, but focus on the shape that you're drawing. So stop telling yourself you're drawing toes and tell yourself that you're drawing shapes, positive and negative spaces, because abstracting things helps you visualize and see things better, like practice seeing things better in general. And then if you practice kind of detaching yourself from like what it is you're drawing, then you can draw anything. Like really what's getting in your way, if you ever tell yourself I can't draw something or I can't do something, it's not that you can't. It's just that your brain is telling you that you can't. And you can't listen to your brain all the time. You got to outsmart it. For example, your brain will say, you can't draw toes. And then you'd be like, no, but I can draw cylinders. And then guess what? If I draw a cylinder, then I can draw a shape on the corner of the cylinder, and then I have a toe. So here, I'm still trying to draw the ankle, and I realized that I didn't follow my initial gesture well enough, so I have to make some adjustments here. You can't draw ankles. I'm telling my brain, yeah, but I can draw bumps. I can draw a tapered line. And then this bump is also really weird. Like you can see that some of these bumps actually go into the foot, right? This one goes like right into the foot. So there we go. And now we are going to draw the nails. All of the limiting beliefs that you tell yourself, that a lot of artists struggle with because they're in their own heads saying that they can't. Those are all, just remember, those are all just beliefs, right? You are not your thoughts. You are the majority of your thoughts, but you are not all your thoughts. So if you always tell yourself that you can't do something, eventually you're going to be right, right? Temporarily, it's just a thought, and it's a thought that you can change. So if you are aware that you have these limiting thoughts and you when you're more aware of when you think about them, you can just kind of like adjust your thinking, right? Like, oh, this person's better than me, or that person's Instagram, shows that they're improving more, or, I can never do this, or I did 3 drawings and they all turned out bad, so I can't draw feet because, I did 3 drawings and 3 out of 3 were terrible. Well, those are just, again, those are kind of toxic thoughts that actually stop you from growing as an artist. And the more you think them, the more they start to appear, the more, right? You kind of open up the door to more limiting thoughts. And then in the end, it's not fun because you're kind of battling all of those negative beliefs instead of focusing on the stuff that really improves your skill, which is most of the time drawing from references or studying references, right? Drawing whatever you want, but really finding good references and studying them for things that you don't know how to draw. Hey, Gaia Gate, welcome in. So let me know in the chat where you guys are all from, because we recently, we used to stream on Sundays and Saturdays, and now we are just streaming on Monday nights. We're trying a new time to hopefully serve more of our community. Lucas Kelly says, best pieces of advice I was ever given when drawing was that 1, detail isn't as important as you think. 2, value is everything. And 3, the whole of the piece is greater than its parts. Those are good pieces of advice. I would say I agree with that. It's true. Details aren't really as important. In fact, suggested detail is better than actual detail. Like, for example, if I drew all of the bones, right, on the feet, like if I did this, I don't really think it adds much to the pose or to like the actual drawing, right? But just emphasizing a few parts of the bones and like these overlaps, right, make the drawing a lot nicer. I'm actually going to do some shading here. This is a chalk pastel. I'm just going to do some very light shading. I'm actually, some of my students have been debating whether it's better to draw with your arm or to draw with your wrist. And I gotta say, using a big tablet really allows me to draw with my arm a lot more. And I really like that. Like, I thought it would just be too big because I was used to using a smaller tablet. But I actually really like how I can use my arm more, and it makes my lines a lot more confident. So if you're struggling with confident lines, try not to draw with your wrist so much, but try instead drawing with your arm and kind of keeping your wrist a little bit more locked. That will help you draw lines that are a little bit more confident looking and less shaky, less hairy. So I'm not gonna, I know that the feet have a dark background, and I'm not gonna do the dark everywhere. I'm just gonna put it in between the toes to emphasize more of the action, right? And again, this is suggested detail. This isn't detail everywhere. It's more to give it a little bit more form. Hey, David Productions, welcome to the Discord. Do I have any tips on drawing hands? Yes, I actually did a hand stream 2 weeks ago. The replay should be in the live like if you go to our channel and you go to live streams, you should be able to see it there. Hello, Lucas Kelly from Ohio. And hello, who, when, how, why. Cool name, bro. Brazil, nice, nice. Yes, we have a similar time zone. I think you're 1 hour ahead. And Zed is tired. You're from Indonesia. Cool. Indonesia is so exotic. I'm a big fan of Bali and Ubud, 2 places that I happen to love. Drawing isn't actually as difficult as people think. If you can let go of self-doubt and limiting thoughts and learn well, your skill will really improve. Yeah, it's definitely the limiting thoughts. Jermina, welcome in. When it comes to time poses, do you ever keep that one pose you thought that you like interesting? Do you ever keep that one pose? I don't know what you mean. Do you mean like, do I pause it, or do you mean, do I like keep the drawing? Because I'm totally pausing these poses. These are supposed to be timed, but I'm pausing them because I want to spend a bit more time on them. David Productions, you want to pursue it as a career. Cool. If you joined our server because you want to turn art into a career, let us know for sure, because our passion is to help art nerds turn their passion into income. So join our Discord if you haven't already, and we can have a conversation. Jermina, keep the drawings. Okay. So keep the drawings. Yes, I definitely keep my drawings. I keep the good ones. Yeah, but most of it is just practice. Like a lot of it, I do it just for practice. Let me see. I had one more pose that I wanted to do, and I will actually load it in Rebel this way. Under window, if I go into, what was it? The references. Let's see here. Reference images. Okay, I actually had that open. So basically it opens up this little thing here. And then you can import a reference image. So if I go into references, I saved a bunch on feet. Let's do this one. Let's do this one here. So I don't think we did one yet on toes that are scrunched like this. So hopefully I can draw this in 10 minutes, because I know we are almost at the end of our stream. But I did want to do one that was a little bit more emotional. Yeah, like I agree. Rochitron, cool. I definitely agree. Like just keeping your drawings for the sake of seeing how much you improve is worth it. right? Like being able to see the progress is really nice. Okay, I'm gonna move this reference into here. No, I didn't want it there. There we go. All right, that's better. So the cool thing with Rebel is that if you guys didn't know this, you can actually project the image onto the canvas. And I believe I can move it. Here. So this is a cool feature that I didn't know about until recently, but you can actually kind of turn on or off. Let me just take this out so you can see. You can turn that on and off, and it allows you to trace stuff. It also can convert the reference image into grayscale in one click, which the makers of Rebel probably knew that values are more important than color. So that's really, really helpful. You can also flip your image, right? Like right here, you can flip it. And at a glance, these actually look like hands, right? Like when they were doing this, I was like, those look like hands. But anyway, it's a pretty cool feature. You can also put guidelines and stuff like that and show guidelines on canvas. This is helpful for like if you ever want to trace something or you want to study something, right? But it's a cool feature. Yeah, I know. I see hands and I can't unsee it either. All right, so very, very quickly, let's try to sketch this out as fast as we can. Right? Like if you said that feet are always wedges, well, Exhibit A, they aren't. They're weird and they do all kinds of crazy things. So if you just limit it to certain shapes, like I said, like I cannot find a perfect method for drawing feet. I can if I'm drawing cartoon feet. Okay, like if I'm drawing cartoon feet, it's pretty simple. Like there's no need to make it really complicated. But I just find like, yes, there are methods, but those methods can be challenged because feet can change so much that it's like I would argue that feet can change more than hands because hands are relatively flat, right? But feet are not flat at all. They're like they're curved. Like the skeletal structure is more like this. It's like a curve, right? And so because it's like that, it's so hard to force it to into something else. Like I find that it's just easier to try and understand the anatomy, understand, you know, the space division between the toes, right? Like the big toe is basically 2 times the size of the other toes. And then like just keep in mind how you would draw a foot if it was a machine, right? Where the hinges are, in a sense, like we talked about. And those like if you can keep some of the structural things in mind, then it becomes really easy. Because you're looking for the right things and you're making decisions based on the understanding of anatomy and understanding of like, you know, why feet are shaped the way they are. So, like, ooh, look at all these wrinkles here on this foot. Hard not to get carried away in those details. So the most important thing with this pose is to really focus on, like, if I had to say what is the most important part of this pose, I would say how the toes are all interacting, like how the toes are all curling together, right? Like drawing the individual toes, like the curves at the bottom, will also really help define the overall shape of them, right? Like this toe's coming out more. Which toe's tucked in more? And this one is really, really tucked in. Figuring out which way the nail is bending. I talk about nail placement a lot in like my hand and feet lessons, only because like I see so many people draw a really good hand and a really good foot, but then they draw this like flat nail, or the nail is going in the wrong perspective, it's going in the wrong direction, and I'm just like, all this work, right? All this work to be ruined by one nail placement going in the wrong direction. So just be really mindful of the nail following the curve and the perspective, the proper perspective, I should say. This foot, the heel is like kind of connecting, or kind of ends halfway at this toe, at the big toe, which is really weird. Right? Like this is a pose where you would need reference, even if you were making this into a cartoon, I think. Because like to really, really draw expressive feet like this is a skill. It's requires good observation and a good understanding of anatomy. So another thing you can add to your like another thing, if you really want to get good at drawing anatomy, is to draw skeletons. Because every time you study a skeleton, you're adding it to your visual library, right? And just like taking notes helps you remember things, like it's proven that taking notes helps you remember things. So take notes in class, guys. If you draw things to study them, you remember them more. It's kind of like you may not think that you remember them, but the fact that you drew it, you had to make like a mental map in your brain, right? Somewhat like studying something. So think of it as like the equivalent of taking notes. If you want to study or get better at drawing feet, draw some foot skeletons. Take some notes. Take notes on the landmarks. What does GSL mean? Hello, Jessun. GSL stands for gesture, shape, and line, and it's a method that I use to teach my students the process of simplifying figure drawing into 3 stages so that it's easier to focus on one stage at a time and not get overwhelmed by all of the things that you need to think about, right? So I have the notes up here. So gesture is the part where you are drawing the movement, right? The shape is when you're focusing on the silhouette or the proportions, and the line is when you take it to finish. So hopefully that helps. Like you can see my gesture, like you can see this is a gestural line, this is a gestural line. And then I kind of then draw the shape on top of that to focus on the proportions and the silhouette. And then lastly, I will draw in my lines. Because if you start with your lines, let me know, guys, like, have you ever struggled with hairy lines? You know what I'm talking about. You guys know what I'm talking about, like this. Oh, I'm drawing a foot. And I swear it's not a hairy foot. It's just I'm not confident with my lines, so I'm just kind of guessing where it is, right? We've all seen this kind of drawing before. So this is when you're trying to focus on everything at the same time, and you shouldn't have to do that. It's actually a lot better to actually just focus on one thing at a time. The gesture is probably the most important step that people always skip. They just start to draw in the line, right? The outline. And without gesture, you get really stiff drawings. You don't get any, like there's no action. It's just very stiff. And there's no like counterbalance. It doesn't feel very human or very dynamic. And the gesture only takes a few seconds to do. So like maybe a minute or 30 seconds. The shape helps you figure out proportions, right? So being able to define the shape and just look at abstract shapes, right? So no complicated shapes, but very, very simple shapes like wedges, cylinders. Cylinders are forms, but I kind of think of that stage as shapes or forms. You can use either. Shapes are generally a little bit easier. And then the line. So once you have your gesture and your shape all mapped out, then the line is easy and you can draw it with confidence. You don't have to guess. You don't have to, you know, make a million strokes and then erase them all just to find like the right one, right? It becomes infinitely easier. So yeah, we have lots of videos on the GSL method on our channel. So you can check those out if you want to try out some more. Hairy lines are an issue to this day. You can do it. Try the GSL method. Try dividing up your stages into 3 and doing lines last. Rin, have you used Krita? Yes, I do use Krita regularly, but I like Rebel for these drawing streams because it actually feels like I'm using pastel and drawing tools. So like actual physical drawing tools. So yeah, I am a big fan of Rebel. And it has like a nice paper texture to it, right? Like it looks like actual paper, and the medium that you use interacts with the type of paper, which is super cool. Okay, I'm gonna erase this monstrosity over here. Yeah. You're going to binge that GSL playlist. Great. If you want to learn more about the GSL method or find more resources, join our Discord, guys. If this is your first time here and you didn't know that we had a Discord, it's an amazing community. We've got like 7,500 people, 7,500 art nerds all around the world have joined us in this vibrant community, sharing resources, giving each other critiques, you know, answering each other's questions, being genuinely helpful, and working on art together. So if that sounds like a community you want to be a part of, definitely join our Discord. It's absolutely free, and we drop tons of cool stuff on there on the regular. So once again, I just want to thank our sponsor for this stream, XP Pen. You guys have an awesome selection of digital art tablets for both beginner and advanced artists. Like, I was just amazed that you can actually buy like a tablet, for a brand new tablet, for like $40, you know, for the price of like a meal, and you can get started with digital art. I've tried their beginner tablets. They work perfectly fine. I use a XP Pen Artist 24-inch second gen. I think I said that right. It's a huge screen display tablet, and I love it. And it's actually very affordable. So if you're looking for an affordable or reliable tablet, go browse their store. Josh and I both use XP Pens, and you will find the link in the description of this video. So if you didn't know, Winged Canvas the mission at Winged Canvas is to make art education easily accessible for everyone. That's why we live stream twice a week, every Saturday and Monday night. Saturday afternoon and Monday night. And we are not just a YouTube channel, we are a school of illustration, helping art nerds turn their passion into income. So shout out to our amazing students and members for supporting our mission. We love seeing your incredible artwork and watching your skills improve in our classes and weekly critiques. So if you didn't know, we have a members, we have tons of memberships, and you can actually get live critique from our instructors. Let me see if I can pull up our office hours here. So live critiques with me happen every Friday at 1 p.m. Jesse's is on Wednesday, Iggy's is on Monday nights, and Josh is Saturday evening. So we you can actually participate in a live critique every week if you become a member on our Patreon. So you can support us on Patreon or join our Discord to start a conversation and say hello. And yeah, I will be posting these notes and my artwork from this stream in our Discord right after the stream. So thanks again, guys, for joining me today. I hope you had fun drawing feet. And just a reminder, there are 2 streams left for March, so you still have time to get your challenge of the month in, and you could get a shout out in our next streams. So Jesse will see you on Saturday, and Josh will see you on Monday for his I redraw your OCs in different directions. That's going to be a cool one. There's still time to submit for that stream, submit your artwork. Join the Discord to find out more details. All right, guys, I had a great time. I hope you learned something new, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.